QuickBooks Pro Plus Desktop 2022 OneNote Presentation Reports Overview. Let's get into it with Intuit's QuickBooks Pro Plus Desktop 2022. If you have access to OneNote, would like to follow along, not required to, but if would like to, icon left-hand side, topic introductions, 1640 reports overview tab. Also note, take a look at the immersive reader tool, topic introductions, also in the text area, same name, same number, but with transcripts that can be translated into multiple languages and either listened to or read in them. Same name and number as a presentation as well. Topic introductions designed to give an introduction to the topic, provide screenshots, links when applicable, accounting background to complement the presentations. Also note that the screenshots can be used to follow along with the presentations if you don't have access to the software at that time. Closing the icon on the left-hand side, we're looking at the reports overview. First screenshot being the home page, remembering that when we look at the major financial statement reports, every transaction that we have here will generally impact two components at least in the transaction, two accounts in other words, on the major financial statements, balance sheet and income statement. And then the rest of the reports will in essence be supporting generally one or multiple line items on those major reports. You can find the reports by going to the drop down, and then you have these icons with the little arrows over here, which help you to find the reports fairly quickly, although if you don't know what you're looking for, this could take a little bit more time. Also note that you could go to the reports drop down and the report center. You can also memorize reports, which shows up here. You've got the scheduled reports up here and the commented reports. If you make comments on reports, they could give you a quick look up on that drop down as well. If you go into the reports center, which was that first option, you have the same layout with these items on the left-hand side as you did with the drop downs on the arrows to the right. We're in the standard tab on the left-hand side, and then you have your categories on the left. Tabs up top, standard, memorized, favorite, recent, and contributed tabs up top. The memorized tab will typically give you a set of memorized categories, but you can memorize these reports on your own, making adjustments to them as you wish, changing, for example, the font or other types of items, name, and so on. And then you can memorize them so you do not have to recreate the memorized reports. We'll talk about that more in future presentations. You could put your favorite reports in here, which is another nice, handy, or fast way to get to those reports that are favorite type of reports. The recent reports, and then we got the contributed reports. If you're looking for like a fancy report that some other person has put together that serves some particular need that they thought was good enough to then add to these types of reports, and Intuit then gives them out, you might find like a fancy report that fits your needs that has been customized using the customization of the reports that we have looked at in the past. Going back to the standard area, you also have your layouts up top in terms of how to view these reports. If you want to get there fast, you could use the list view. The standard view is this item with the 4 squares, and then you could use this view, which goes through them in a panel type of view format, which gives you a look at the report. So if you don't know which report you actually want and want to get a quick view of them, this view is a nice way to do that. This is the standard view, so we could see them in basically these blocks, which gives you a smaller look at them. And you still got to scroll through them, but this is like the middle area between the two views. This is generally the default view. Up top, we got the company and financial, balance sheet and income statement type reports. Then we're on the customers and receivables. Basically, these reports now supporting an item on the balance sheet, typically that being the accounts receivable, primary 2 reports, AR aging, and the AR aging summary and detail. The sales tab, these reports will typically be supporting a line item on the income statement, that being sales or revenue, typically breaking them out by customer and or item. Then we have the jobs, times, and mileage. This will be more useful when you're using a job cost system, and you'll have job cost related reports here. We might go into that in more detail in another section when we focus in on possibly jobs and classes. Vendors and payables, focusing in on the major balance sheet account of accounts payable, liability account, major 2 reports, AP aging and AP aging detail reports. Purchases, these are going to go in the purchasing area, purchased by vendor, so you're focusing in on, in essence, the purchasing cycle here, which could be more applicable if you're dealing with inventory. Then we have the inventory, also going to be more applicable when dealing with inventory as opposed to a service company and tracking that inventory within the system. These reports, of course, supporting the balance sheet line item of inventory, breaking the inventory out by inventory items as well as dollar amount. Employee and payroll, which would be applicable if you're doing the payroll through the QuickBooks system. Then you have many reports dealing with payroll being a fairly intense area in and of itself. We'll talk about more as we go through the practice problem, and we have a whole course on payroll if you'd like to dive into it in more detail itself. The banking reports, which have deposit and check reports, getting into the detail about the increases and decreases in the checking account, which you can also get to by running basically a transaction detail report and filtering that report. We also have the bank reconciliation, which is a little bit different than a normal report, but a very important internal control comparing our entries into the checking account to those made by the bank for us, giving us a double check. Huge internal control, very important. We'll talk about that in the second half of the course when we get to the bank reconciliations. We have the account and taxes reports. These reports have some reports that are really useful, but they put them way down here because they might have debits and credits in them. And some people might not like debits and credits so much, but even if you don't understand debits and credits, this is a good way to learn them, some of these reports down here. And you could still use a lot of these reports just in terms of their balances, some of the key ones being the trial balance, which basically is the income statement, the balance sheet on top of the income statement without the subcategories. Great report to be bouncing back and forth from when you're analyzing transactions as you enter them and seeing what the impact is on the financial statements, things like invoices, bills, and so on. The general ledger is similar to the transaction detail reports. There's also a transaction detail by date, which is a nice report to use in a journal report that will show all the transactions and actually show the journal entries. Great report for learning the debits and credits, and you can bounce back forth from it to the balance sheet and the income statement and really start to understand what's being recorded and what's being built kind of behind the scenes in QuickBooks. Then we've got the budgets. The budgets are going to be something that project out into the future. They're not normal reports either because those reports are not being generated from the past data input, but rather we would project the budget out forward, data input the budget into the system. Once done, we've got the nice budget versus actual type of report that will compare what we considered the budget to be to what has actually happened. And then we've got the lists. Lists are typically going to be repetitive because many of the lists will be up top too, such as lists are going to be lists of data that don't include generally financial data like customer contact lists, vendor contact lists, employee contact lists.